All right, welcome everyone to the Believe in Yourself Heart&Mind podcast, where we bring on really amazing and special guests who just go throughout their life journey and are constantly working on themselves, being able now to share with us a lot of what they do and how it is they got to where they are. So super excited to bring on someone who is professional, a business owner, and also went into acting and has a lot of experience in just working with a lot of different people. She didn't start off knowing exactly what that she was going to go into becoming a business owner, but now she is. So I'm super excited to kind of hear more about that, especially since many of us are thinking about being either an entrepreneur or just stepping out of our side of our comfort zone. And so let's welcome Carina Morris. And Carina, I'd love to hear more about your journey. And if you could just start off with the fact that you do both, actually, where you're in business, but you're also an actor. How does that work out for you? And what are your passions today?
Yeah, so hello everyone. It's a pleasure to connect and meet with all of you. So yes, I am Carina. I am a full-time actress and also a full-time business owner. I own a life insurance agency by the name of Covered by Carina LLC. Um, oh boy, how do I balance? I usually try to take things one day at a time. The benefit of being an entrepreneur and a business owner is that you kind of have the opportunity to kind of design your own schedule and plan out what your day will look like. But that's also a caveat because depending on what happens, sometimes things can kind of interrupt or kind of break up the routine that you might try to set for yourself. So I just take things one day at a time. Sometimes it's one moment at a time. I take lots of breaks in the day, and make sure that I have my lunch and take care of myself, do self-care routines and practices as well, just to keep myself grounded, to make sure that I'm focusing on the right things. And I think another big thing that I've learned this year is the power of saying no, because I have a lot of things that get added to my plate. And a lot of times, even if I want to participate or attend a certain thing, I just don't have the capacity. So I'm really learning to honor my no.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
think I want to let's dive a little deeper into that no piece, because so many of us who start out in our career earlier on in life, it's so easy to say yes because that's where we get the opportunities. But because now you have so many opportunities, you need to be able to size back to no's.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on someone who's kind of earlier in their career? Let's say going back to your younger self, you basically said yes to many things, but from what I when I was talking to you before, you start off believing that we wanted to go into acting, but then there was
Hmm.
this passion that allowed you to say, hey, maybe that's not the only way or the route. And so you continue to open yourself up to more opportunities. So if you can walk us through that timeline and how you opened yourself up, but also at the same time learn to narrow that focus.
Yeah, it's a challenge. When I was younger, my main focus was acting. It was building up my acting career. I spent about 10 years doing stage production and theater work. So, and it was all volunteer based. So many of it was not paid and it was kind of hobby-ish. So I learned that I loved acting and I fell in love with the craft of acting. And so I knew at a young age that that's what I wanted to do with my life. But then as I began to get older, I started realizing that there were other things I was also really interested in, and maybe not as passionate as I was about acting, but still really enjoyed and loved to do. Um, and so when I was in my early 20s, I started a sales job, and that kind of ushered me into what I do now as an insurance agency owner. And it's funny because as much as I thought, that my career path was going to be very linear, it has not been. It's had many different branches and has many different pivots. And I've had to pause on my acting career many, many, many times. I've had to pause on my sales career many, many, many times. So I think along the way, I learned a lot more about balance and just finding things that I truly enjoy and knowing that it's okay if I'm not specifically focusing on that one thing at this one time, that as long as I'm still immersed and involved in it, that that's enough for me.
That's a really great point. And I know you used the word balance, and what came to mind when I heard that was a conversation I had with a life coach of mine, and she was talking to me about like being balance as in like being intuitive, knowing where you are, how you're feeling, what brings out the best version of yourself, like what makes you the happiest. So I don't know
Right.
if you were when you talk about balance, like is it coming from within yourself, trying to say, hey, like how am I really feeling? Like, do you have that self-talk? What do you do when you try to figure out balance?
It's a combination of a lot of things. It's definitely majority self-talk, and I had to learn how to talk myself into finding balance because I used to be a yes person, a big yes person, and I learned very quickly that I cannot be a yes person. So it was partly that, and it also was external factors because, as we all know, life has a tendency to slow us down when we're going too fast and we're doing too much. And so I was forced to slow down and find that balance. I was forced to stop and pause. And so in those moments, I was able to take a step back and self reflect and say, okay, what's happening? I feel overwhelmed. I feel this. I feel that. How can I pivot? How can I change? What things can I add or subtract from my day or from my life that will help me get back on track?
That's really powerful that you're able to recognize all that. Could you give us like a quick example of something that you said yes to, but then you had to learn to pivot and acknowledge that you needed to either remove or substitute or add to?
Yeah, actually, so last week I went on a working vacation. I'm also a freelance virtual assistant. And so one of my VA clients invited me to a retreat in Northern Oregon. And so part of that was with me saying yes, was also me saying, okay, how do I need to pivot? Because I had other things scheduled that week that I could not do. And I had every intention on doing them, but I had to ask myself before I left, okay, what are the priority items? I know that I need to do this. I know I need to do this. And then I looked at those priority items and I compared them to my calendar and said, okay, I need to start bearing some things down and eliminating some things. So I had to decline quite a few meetings and I wasn't able to reach out to some of my clients for my life insurance business, unfortunately, last week. So I had to block off the entire week to make sure that I'm setting the expectation like I'm not available. I still want to help you, but this week is not a good week for me. Um, so yeah, I just had to one by one, line by line, go through and see what's the bigger priority. I also wanted to prioritize rest while I was at the retreat, which was difficult, but it was also freeing because in me letting things go, I was able to find that rest. And I was also spending time with my wife, which was amazing. So
That's
yeah,
beautiful. So what I'm hearing is you acknowledge what had um more value for you as a person in your time in your journey today.
yeah,
And when you said yes to that retreat, it was really in combination of all those assessments that you've made for yourself.
yeah,
And then you also said no to things that obviously were going to take away time, but wasn't really adding any more value. It was just going to be something you can take on when you come back. It's not like it's going to
exactly.
leave, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's a really
Yeah,
good point because I
yeah,
love the fact that you mentioned taking out your calendar. So you already know how important having a calendar is,
of
especially
course.
owning a business or being an entrepreneur and things like that. And then learning to respect your time that you can say, um, this is what I intend for my day or week to look like. And here's what is gonna add to that week and make it even more, either fulfilling, healing, or whatever you need. and
Yeah.
here's what's kind of blocking that. So I need to kind of
Hmm.
remove that. So I love that
Yeah.
example because it went back to your earlier, statement of the fact that there is a way to balance and learning to self-talk and walk through that with yourself. Um, and I found that really important because I think a lot of us are so eager to listen to everybody else, especially when you're younger.
Yeah.
Or even when you're older and you're like in
Hmm.
this position of, no, this is who I am, this is my identity. So
Yeah.
I want to ask you this interesting question of what is your identity? Like, how do you know that this is who you are and not allow others to dictate this is who you are, even where you are today, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very loaded question, but it's something that I recently was talking with a career coach about. So I have an answer. My identity is rooted in my sense of self, into my grounding practices, into the things that I implement into my day each day to make sure that I'm still connected to self. So for me, it's getting up in the morning and having my mushroom coffee and taking that time out and just enjoying the morning, whether it's 10 minutes or it's 30 minutes, just having that time. Then it's looking at my calendar and saying, okay, what things do I have on my agenda today? What things do I need to prioritize? And then attacking that to-do list one by one, but also knowing that when I get to a certain point in the day, like usually around noon, I need to take a break, so I take a break. And I have breaks scheduled into my calendar. I think
Wow.
that's huge. And I don't know if a lot of people do that, but I
Mhm.
definitely recommend scheduling breaks, scheduling lunches, just scheduling time to disconnect or just look at the alert or look at the event and say, okay, this is a pause for me. This is a time for me to take a step back and breathe. So that is the one thing that helps keep me grounded enough so that I don't get influenced by other people's opinions and other people's energy and things like that. I also love crystals. So I have my crystals always around me all the time to keep my space clear and open. And so that also helps me tremendously with being able to hear my own voice and know what I need and being able to recognize that first.
I was just curious, what do you do with the crystals? Because I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people do a lot of different things with crystals. Some people, have rituals and practices. I'm not that deep. I just keep them around me. So, like, as we're talking, I have crystals literally sitting next to my laptop right now. I usually wear a chakra pendant, a Tree of Life chakra pendant. I don't have it on right now because I'm showcasing my Covered by Karina shirt. But so usually I just carry them around and I keep them near me in the places that I spend the most time. And that's usually what's recommended. So that's what I do.
Okay, that's awesome. So, I'm thinking it's similar to like a memento or like a
Hmm.
little tangible object that helps to
Yeah.
remind you like you're at peace, like this is
Yeah.
a good place, like good vibes, something like that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Maybe
Mhm.
I should get something like that or just like create an environment that tells me, oh hey, or that I think the fun part that you said was you carry it with you, so that makes you more at peace too because you're
Mm.
constantly reminded. And I think in people it's like sometimes people get tattoos for that reason too, or it's like
Yeah.
a good reminder or like something that helps them remember like, hey, you're good and you're enough, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
and I think it was powerful too what you said, that your identity is not necessarily um in what other people say, but you're focusing on the action piece that tells you your day-to-day experience that creates the identity
Yeah.
altogether. uh,
Yeah.
that's really powerful. I find that's similar to kind of what I do as well. I'm not necessarily like trying so hard to say this is who I am, right? Like not trying to convince myself, but it's through living and through being that you find yourself at peace with yourself, like
Yeah,
your entirety, and then you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just are. And if you feel
exactly.
tired, you're like, hey, I'm tired.
Exactly.
I think that's
Exactly.
really smart because I'm learning
Yeah.
that right now. But before it's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this for this person. I have to turn in this work. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that little
Mm-hmm.
student who feels like indebted to that grade. Like I have to
Yes.
do that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that is
Um,
100% true.
yeah, so let's check in about the fact that you said you started off earlier with your acting careers and you built so many skills and then you went into sales. Um, and with acting, there came a lot of mistakes and
Hmm.
hardships, trying to figure
Yeah.
yourself out and all these different things.
Hmm.
How has all those opportunities and challenges shaped you to be the person you are today, or even when you went into sales or going and starting your own business?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like any circumstance or any challenge that pushes you and helps you to grow obviously has a deep impact in your life. And I feel like the challenges that I faced when I was a young adult and into my 20s and now into my 30s, with acting and just with the industry as a whole and how challenging and difficult it is to even get in, to get your foot in the door, have really sharpened my drive and my perseverance. Um, I feel like it's the same with my sales career and being a life insurance broker now, because it takes a level of thick skin and a resilience with these industries. You get a lot of no's in acting. If you're an actor, anyone watching this, you know, you get a lot more no's than yeses. And it's the same with sales. A lot of people, they can be quite unkind on the phone because they know they're not looking at you. So it takes it definitely builds character and it builds a level of resilience that I feel like has really helped me to deal better with any other challenges that are happening in my life. If I run into any other difficult circumstances, like going through the pandemic, how detrimental all of that was, it really showed me how resilient I was because being isolated, not being able to be out and about and be able to meet people and talk to them, I had to be creative. So, excuse me, I came up with a whole bunch of different things. I started an online virtual voice and movement class on my Instagram page. And, I never really had anybody who attended necessarily, but it was good for me because it got me re-immersed, excuse me, it got me re-immersed into my love and my passion. And I was able to feel like I was connecting with someone, even if there was no one there with me. So, yeah, I would say those are the two things that have been built up the most in my character.
I feel like you're this really cool box of surprises. It just keeps coming out and more and more. And it's like, whoa, so cool.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome that you're like on Instagram doing all these really neat creative activities for yourself,
yeah,
not necessarily for
yeah,
anyone.
yeah,
And you're also finding your voice in really difficult spaces.
yeah,
And standing firm and holding your ground of what you want to do, even though, like you were saying, many people are gonna say no to your face.
yeah,
Or to your resume or whatever, right? But
yeah,
this
yeah.
persistence that you have, this grit that you have is incredible. Could you maybe help us understand where this grit came from? Is it coming from your acting, maybe from people who inspired you growing up, or books that you read? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think in my lineage, I have some resilient ancestors for sure. But I also think it's the self-development that I did along the years. I would read books about, personal development and self-help when I was a young adult. And, I continue to, try to immerse myself with coaches, working with a career coach and just listening to podcasts and keeping my mind focused on positive things, focused on things that help me to grow and move forward. So that's where that comes from.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're basically saying that you're always learning, that there's always room to continue growing and learning. Do you ever feel tired though from just constantly learning and developing? Is there a time where you just say, okay, I think I've learned enough. I'm just gonna take a break or a rest and just quiet myself and hear myself? Because I find that there's so much information out in the world, and there's always ways to learn and grow. But I guess it goes back to the idea of balance. Like,
Hmm.
how do you know when um it's not that this information is not good for you. It's just more that sometimes you just need to rest and hear yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I definitely pay attention to my physical cues because my body tells me when I'm tired before my mind can connect it sometimes because I'm in go mode so much. So if my body is feeling really tired, if I'm, if I'm feeling like I don't really want to focus on what it is that I'm learning or listening to, that's another cue for me. Just take a break, Karina. Come back to it in a week, couple weeks. Just stop for now and come back when you're ready. Um, Definitely if I feel like I'm doing too many things at once, because I often have to multitask during the day. So if it's too much for me to try to focus on something, or if I know it's something that I need to be laser focused on, I'll pause and I'll move it to a later time of the day, or I'll move it to a different day if I can. So yeah.
That's awesome. That I love that you mentioned the idea that sometimes you just gotta work with your body and recognize
Yeah.
when or those cues as you mentioned, because
Yeah.
the mind can work a little differently than the body, but then learning
Hmm.
when it's in sync and when it's not in sync, it's really important as well. So
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to go back to a part where you said that you you're trying to create more opportunities, more avenues for working as a, you know, a salesperson or maybe an actress or actor. And
Hmm.
from what I was, another person I was talking to, she's like a performer and a friend, and she was telling me that there's not a lot of women in that or females in that space as a
Hmm.
performer, and sometimes there's this perception of you gotta lower your options, or
Hmm.
um you gotta say yes to me because um I'll help you, and then you kind of have to bend over backwards to do whatever this person wants you to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure you kind of understand that, but like
Yeah.
um how did you kind of say like, hey, there's not a lot of people who look like me, sound like me, or understand my background, but still um I'm gonna go all in and not
Hmm.
be discouraged.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's a challenge. I am, a woman of color. I, present as an African American woman, and the opportunities for African American women in the acting industry is just virtually zero. So you just got to push through, and decide that you're worth it, that you're worth the investment, that you're worth the challenges that you're going to run into. I'm sure we've all seen, the depiction of, the road to success and how you think that it's going to be straight up, but it's actually with all these curves and twists, and it's up this mountain, and you've got to climb over this, and you've got to watch out for this jagged rock. I mean, really, That's exactly how it feels. And that's how it's been since I started. But I think something within me just knew that I could handle it and knew that I could do it because I have such a deep love and appreciation. And I want to be able to extend that to my own children to show them you can do this. If this is your dream, if this is your passion, put your all into it, work hard, don't quit, stay consistent, and you will make it. Your dreams can come true. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you're talking from experience, so I'm sure anyone who's listening can feel like this is real and not
Yeah,
something that's just being said. That's really
yeah,
powerful that you are a living proof of your younger self who envisioned this future self, that
yeah.
she can do pretty much anything that she sets her mind to. And
Hmm.
yes, she may come from an African American background, or you know, I guess doesn't look like everyone else within her industry, but still she can succeed, and she's still succeeding. And I think that's a really powerful statement to make. Um, and I wanted to ask about your thoughts on authenticity, because
Hmm.
I think it's very related to a lot of the conversation we've had so far,
Yeah.
where I've talked to different kinds of people, and it's so interesting because when you're in a different workspace, you can't really be quote unquote authentically you.
Hmm.
And you kind of have to be that role, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's just so you have you as a person, everyone as a person, they have so many layers to themselves, and
Yeah.
learning to kind of like maneuver but still be true to who you are, and then
Yeah.
not doubt yourself, because sometimes you're gonna feel unauthentic, you could say, but that's not
Hmm.
necessarily you being unauthentic or inauthentic, but you actually just, like we were talking about, like just needing rest, or maybe that is not the space for you, or whatever the case may be. You need to have that
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Man, that's deep. That's so deep, and it's so true. People, I feel like there are some people who try to tie your authenticity or your identity to your commitments to things, and I don't feel like they're synonymous. I feel like you saying no and owning your no and being okay with that is it's fine. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're, trying to be fake or being inauthentic or anything like that. It means that you are recognizing yourself and what you need in that moment or in that time. So, and also, talking about authenticity, I'm queer, I'm a lesbian, I'm married to a woman, and in my younger years, my coming out story and my identity looked a lot different for a lot of people who know me personally. And so I had to learn in that journey too, coming out to my parents and, coming out to my network, the people who knew me at that time. And unfortunately losing a lot of those people, but still being authentic and true to who I was. You realize that true authenticity can hurt sometimes. Choosing yourself and choosing to be your true authentic self can mean that you might lose someone, that you might miss out on certain opportunities because people may not want to be associated with you anymore. They might think, you're weird, or they may not understand who you are. But knowing that as a human, you are multifaceted and that, your authentic self at this point is your authentic self at this point, and that it's okay if that changes in the future.
That's amazing what you just said. I had just so many thoughts in my head of like different cultures, different
Yeah,
timelines, and like
yeah,
um because even today there are, groups of people or individuals who are kind of questioning, like, what do I do when now we reach a global setting and my
yeah,
culture is still going through this way of living of like keep to your line and just stay focused and
exactly,
do what you're told
exactly.
kind of thing, right? And then
Yeah,
learning to
yeah,
push all those boundaries, but then as you were saying, as you kind of quote unquote pushed, right? Or like let out whatever it is that's true to you. Others had to learn either to accept it or to kind of walk away. But even then,
Exactly.
it's like not necessarily a bad thing either, I feel, because um one is that's always what's been inside of them, and now it's kind of up to them to face it, what they want, and
Hmm.
make a choice from there based on someone, maybe an event, right? Like you were saying, like you coming out.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it just like uh it conflicted with their perception of who you are, or
Absolutely.
their whole
Yeah.
world of like who, what am I doing here, and like what is
Yeah.
this, what's the meaning of life. So for a
Right.
moment they had to question all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think you're right in that it's okay where you are today, and it's good to listen to what you're feeling, what you're going through, because it is valid. And I think the more we can learn to recognize the validity of our emotions and what we're going through, and not doubt it, I feel like
Yeah.
we'll get further than if we try to like hold everything in and push it
Yeah.
all down.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I I just wondered if you had any quick tips or guidelines for those who are just, I think at this point, looking to maybe either own their own new business, or uh, walk towards this unfamiliar setting, or maybe challenge themselves on a new personal development journey. If you had any top 3 or 4 ways to either get them started or help them remind themselves of maybe where they are or who they are, what would those things be?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like number one, take the risk. Whatever it is, no matter how crazy or ridiculous it sounds, or if 80 million people have already done it, there is only one you. And the world needs what you have. So take the risk and just do it. Number two, stay consistent. The hardest part is getting started, but then the second hardest part that nobody really talks about is continuing to be consistent, getting up every day, committing to it, taking the time, carving out the time to do things, going to talk to people, meeting people, stepping outside of your comfort zone. Those are things that you consistently have to do, and they're so small every day, but they add up to be exponentially larger, in the grand scheme of things. So consistency is key for sure. Number two. Number three, know that it's okay that you're not passionate about it. Because I feel like a lot of people talk about, oh, you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah, that might be true, but not everybody is going to find that right away. And so it's okay that you're not passionate about what you're doing, but find something you enjoy, find something you like, because sometimes that's all you can hold on to, and it's okay until you get to that next point. Um, and number four, just breathe. So much of life is all about, go, 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 rush, rush, rush. We have to get here. We have to do this now. This has to be done. And we forget the power of your breath and how everything starts from the breath and everything ends with the breath. So breathe, take your time, and just know that it'll be even greater than you anticipate that it will be, because it's from you and you decided to do it.
That's really awesome. And thank you for mentioning all those 4 amazing tips, because um well, one, I I think we all need to remember that we have a long life ahead. And
Yeah,
hopefully
yeah,
that's the case for a lot of people. And we want to kind of you know take the time to cherish what we have each moment of the way, versus
yeah,
trying to wear everything out in our bodies, just because we want to take on more than we could handle. And
Hmm.
and I think that's coming back down to like self-respect.
Of
um
course. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's interesting when you were saying to breathe is back, many many years ago when there was like no TV or anything of that sort. um how often things were moving slowly and that was the norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's so
nowadays
true.
rushing everything because you can just
Yeah.
like watch on your phone, you can go anywhere and get what you want. It's like more accessible in a sense.
Yeah.
And I know we talked a lot about your journey so far to where you are today, the idea of
Yeah.
balance, giving tips and ideas to those who are just starting out or just, going through the journey of learning how to live their own self-exploring, learning how to explore their own life.
Hmm.
So I think this is a good time to talk about what kind of impact you're looking to make, where you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
You're taking on new risk, new activities, like you're saying with Instagram and sharing
Hmm.
what you know with others. You're, doing business travels. You're taking on new clients. You're constantly working with your life or career coach. So
Yeah.
what's your impact you're trying to create? Because there must be a reason why you're doing so much, and that you're taking on a new level of self, you could say, like trying to become a better version of you each year, or each time. Why is
Yeah.
what are you trying to do?
Honestly, I feel like it's ancestral. I just feel like my ancestors, and I did a school project when I was in middle school where we had to trace the lineage of our family. And I never got a chance to figure out like exactly like what tribes in Africa I'm from, like what Native American tribes I'm related to or associated with. So I feel like ancestrally, I need to continue the work in whatever work that is that I'm supposed to do clearly encompasses acting and sales. So I have this deep drive and passion to help people and to connect with people and to know people, to get to know who they are. And I can do both while doing both, which is a really cool and unique experience for me. And also just being able to be introduced to the new experiences, on the acting side. You meet so many different people who are just from so many different ways of life and walks of life, and it's so interesting to learn more about their stories and their journeys while you're also building your own character, and building their journey and then getting to know them and how they connect with your scene partner or whoever, they're appearing in the scene. And just the depth and the breadth and the just the stuff. It's so cool. I don't know. I can't think of another word besides stuff, but it's just the stuff. It's so interesting and so fascinating, and it enhances me as a human being. And on the sales side, with life insurance, I've always been in sales from a standpoint of wanting to help people. I started out in car sales where I used to sell high risk insurance to drivers in Ohio. Then I moved on to being a claims adjuster, and I was a claims adjuster for a few years where, people are in a dire situation. They just had a loss. And so I step in and help support them and get them back to the place that they were before. And so, now I'm a life insurance broker. So, I sell, and not necessarily sell, but I help people build and secure generational wealth for their families. So they don't have to do the fundraisers and the GoFundMe's and the cookouts and the fish fries or whatever else, that they have a plan in place, which I think is so important and something that, as hard and as difficult it is to talk about death. and to talk about the end of life and preparing for that. It's so necessary because I meet so many people every day who are like, oh, yeah, my sister just passed away and her husband has no idea what to do. My grandmother passed away and she only had this much life insurance and it wasn't enough. So our whole family had to come together, and scrimp and scrape. And it's like, we don't have to do that. We can change things. We can help generations after us to, our children to be able to retire comfortably with cash value in their IUL. Help your cousin get an annuity so that way when they retire, they have money that they can live off of. So they don't have to worry about Social Security, which who knows if it's even going to be a thing by the time we get to retirement. So it's just changing the way things are, changing hopefully the way things will continue to be going forward in the future. And just helping people to be better, to come up with a better plan to help benefit their families. So that's where it comes from.
So, okay, to summarize, it's basically you just have this amazing passion of and
Yes.
drive to love people,
Yeah.
and you're just very curious and interested, and there's this calling for you that you tapped into, it seems like, of
Hmm.
being present with people and using your skills and your talents to get people to a better place in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I capture everything?
You did. That's how I would say it. I can be long-winded at times. So
No, that was great. I love the way you described it. It was so good. And I love
thank
the
you.
way you just like you had such a huge smile when you were talking about
Thank
it.
you.
It's
Thank
clear
you.
that you love what you do and
Yeah.
you're seeing the impact because you're there witnessing it. Um, and it sounds like those were also a bit of like real stories that you were
Hmm.
sharing as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
That can be
definitely.
scary what to think about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and maybe just some of your expertise on when people are, young, right? Like in their late 20s or early 30s. What are some steps they can take to I don't know, like plan in that way towards their, I guess, death. Like
Yeah.
their time when they're not here anymore. Like I know it sounds awkward to talk about like something
Hmm.
that it seems so far away, but like you were mentioning, it can just be a moment's time of when that
Hmm.
happens and you just don't know. How would you tell someone to kind of either learn more about or get started? What are some of those things that you need to know?
Yeah. So the first thing that you need to know is that get the information. You can always contact me. You don't have to contact me, but go on Google, talk to someone else, talk to another agent or a broker who sells life insurance or who works in the life insurance industry because not every broker sells. And just find out the basics. What's the difference between a whole life policy and a term life? What are the pros between the two? What are the cons? What is an annuity? What is an IUL? Just get the basic information so that you're knowledgeable because the knowledge, it's power. We used to hear that when we were kids, but truly it is. Get the knowledge that you need to be able to make an informed decision. And then number two, connect with a professional to be able to come up with a plan because purchasing life insurance is not just a singular transaction. It's not, I sit down with you, we go through the questions, you get approved, blah, blah, blah. No, it is, let's sit down and figure out what you need. And that is what I do. It's step by step. It's, basically doing a needs analysis. Who in your family needs, life insurance? Who in your family would be affected by your death? Who in your family would be affected by a change in income if you were to suddenly pass away? Do you have young children? Do you have parents that you're going to be taking care of when they get older? So on and so forth. So taking all of those things into account, into consideration, and then coming up with a plan to say, okay, I know that this is my needs analysis. These are the things that I need to make sure that are covered. These are the people who need to be covered. So then how much life insurance do I need based on my assets, based on my liabilities, that would make sure that if I were to pass away next week, tomorrow, 2, 3 months from now, 20, 30 years from now, what do I need so that way when I am gone, nothing changes. There's no blip in the process. Nobody is struggling. We don't have to worry about losing the house. We don't have to worry about losing the car, so on and so forth. So that's the plan. It's a partnership and it's a lifelong partnership. My job doesn't stop once you purchase a policy because you have family, you have friends, you have colleagues, you have acquaintances who all will need this information too, and who ideally need life insurance, and a lot of whom are relying on their works, their employer's life insurance policy, which has a lot of gaps and it's not guaranteed and it's hard to get the payout. So having control over your own life insurance policy and coming up with a plan is the first step to making sure that in old age or in an unexpected death, that we're still prepared. We have this plan in place, and now when it needs to activate, it can activate and everything will be
You explained it so well. And
Thank
it's so
you.
convincing that we need to do something if you're listening and act now. It also makes me
Yeah,
think a lot the way you phrase it as first, what do I need? Then who are the people that are most important to me and how are they going to be
yeah,
affected? What do they
yeah,
need? Like how can I make a
hmm,
plan for that? I thought that
yeah,
was really, really really relevant because it made me think too with, um in America and maybe in other places in the world where it's easier for us to kind of say, "Oh, I'm going to move to this state," and some people actually don't even talk to their family for a while, but then
yeah, yeah,
they still have to consider these things because there are what ifs, and I like that you said the idea that even your employer and the insurance there is not complete. There are
yeah,
gaps like you mentioned, and
yeah.
I'm wondering just how much we know about these gaps. Or
Right.
are we just kind
Yeah.
of like lowballing ourselves and saying, oh, just keep going and working until we retire. And
Exactly.
that's how
Exactly.
we live our life, right? But again, that's a more common conversation than what you're talking about. So thank you for bringing that up and sharing that in that way.
Of course.
So I know that we talked a little bit about the risk piece, and maybe it'll come back the third one.
I'm still trying to bring it back.
But the idea of risk, you're an entrepreneur. Um, you said that you're African American woman, queer. You have an acting profession on the side.
Yeah.
You're just doing so much, but you're still
Hmm.
overall an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you're constantly taking risks. And so, what are some of the big lessons you've learned from taking risks? Because I think there is a certain fear of it's gonna take a lot of money, and I don't know if I want to
Hmm.
spend that much, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk to people, and I've been so quiet and shy all this time. Like now
Hmm.
I have to kind of become someone else. What
Yeah.
are some of
Yeah.
your approach to taking risk?
Yeah, it takes a level of courage and bravery, I feel, to take a risk because it's so easy to stay in your comfort zone and to stay comfortable and to not go outside of that and to stay in your box and that's just where you are. But taking the risks means you step into the unknown, which is the hardest part of taking a risk because you don't know what's going to happen when you decide to say yes to your idea or your business, or you click, submit on that payment for, your LLC or whatever it might be the case. So the initial part of taking a risk is getting through that, working through that courage and working through that fear. Because I know that's what I experienced a lot when I started my insurance agency. And absolutely when I started acting, I was nervous Nelly for sure, because, I didn't know and I was still learning. So, it just all goes into the process and into the journey of you getting to where you're supposed to be. So that for sure is the biggest lesson that I've learned about taking risks. Another lesson that I've learned is honestly that most of the time that first risk is going to turn into another risk. And I don't feel like people talk about that enough. That when you take run risk, that's not just it. And it's like, okay, I'm cool now. Like you're going to be taking a lot of risks because, owning an insurance agency, you have to take the test, and study for the life insurance exam, which is a risk because that test is kind of difficult. And then, beyond that, if you want to start a business, then you have to take the risk of, starting an LLC and all of the implications and risks that are associated with that. And then now you have a business. So now people associate you as a business owner. So it builds upon itself. So that's the other part, being okay and getting comfortable with taking those additional risks after you take the first risk. And the third lesson that I have learned, particularly in this past year, is about patience. Because with every risk, that you have to be patient because you have to trust that it will work out and know that if that initial risk doesn't work out, that you might have to pivot and take another risk, or you might have to pause and just wait and see if that risk pans out. Because for some risks, it could take years to really see anything come into fruition. So you have to trust yourself and know that the one risk that you take today is going to lead up to your success later on. So, yeah.
That's amazing. You're right. And I think it brought back to the idea of consistency. How else are you gonna be able to continue to build on all those risks?
Yeah.
Every single risk seems bigger than the rest that
Yeah.
came behind
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you're
Definitely.
becoming a bigger version of yourself each time as well, because you have to
Of
think
course.
more and bigger and better, and you need to more information, better people around you, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but in a sense, you're creating your life the way you're envisioning it. So I think
Yeah.
start there. It sounds like that's where you did, and
Hmm.
now you're where you are today because you started small, but you
Yeah.
continue to level yourself up each time. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing all that. It's
Of
really, really
course.
powerful. And
Of
our
course.
final question for you is who or what inspires you?
Oh man, that's a great question. So I am honestly inspired by other people who dream and take risks. That's my biggest portion of inspiration because, like I said before, it takes so much courage to take the initial risks and then to do things that change the world, that change the life the way that we know it is so huge. And so I admire people who take really big risks, much bigger risks than I've ever taken in my life. And it inspires me to take bigger risks because I know if they could do it, then so could I. Um, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great statement. Now you can take it to the rest of your life, that find all those great people that inspires you and continue taking those risks. And I hope that people who are listening also recognize that that the stories that you create for yourself can be an inspiration for someone else. And
Absolutely.
as you take risk upon risk, you're not only inspiring yourself, but you are also inspiring others who are listening to your story. So
Yeah.
thank you, Karina, for being that inspiration as you share
Thank
your
you.
story. Um,
Yeah.
and so where can people find you and connect?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on my website. It is coveredbycarina.com. I also have links to my Facebook page, my Instagram, and my LinkedIn page as well. So please connect with me there. If you want to follow my acting journey, my Instagram handle is Carina and Morris on IG. So please connect with me there. I would love to meet all of you, whoever is watching, and connect with you. Ask me questions, follow me, whatever it is, please just keep in touch because I will keep in touch with you. Of
Beautiful. And thank you so much. And everyone, continue to take on more risk, as Carina mentioned, if you haven't already done so, and perhaps even come back to Carina and tell her about how she's impacted you. And I hope everyone has a great day. So number one, you said take the risk. Number two was I'm trying to think back to
I believe it was consistency.
Consistency, you're right. And number three is, let me think. I just know it was like really great, but then
right.
I'll have to like
What's
watch it
number
again.
three?